here comes the West Indies. And when you're facing the generals, nearly every ball is a funeral. And when we batting, brother, go and put your men on the boundary line. And if you give we a liquor, that is merely a hiccup. Look, you win the little battle, you lose the war. It's the same result every time. Everybody sing, here comes the West Indies. Here comes the West Indies. Them rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here comes the West Indies. I tell you now, here comes the West Indies. Here comes the West Indies. Them bad boys gonna bring you to your knees. Here comes the West Indies. Special request to the Trinity posse. And what about the Guyana posse? And what about the Jamaica posse?
Welcome to our new Politics 101 podcast. It's our cricket podcast. West Indies Cricket 101. And we're going to try to do this on the weekends. There's been lots of requests for us to do a cricket podcast and to talk a little bit about cricket and engage in some of the issues around West Indies cricket. As you know, cricket is very much part of West Indian society, and we engage cricket here as beyond the boundary using the CLR James framework, which sees cricket as more than just what goes on the field of play, and that cricket has a lot to do with the Caribbean society, the essence of the Caribbean society. Of course, cricket, a game that was introduced to us by our former colonizer, the British, and what we have done in the Caribbean is take that game and turn it into a liberating tool, so that cricket, like any sport for us, is not just simply a sport. It's really an arena of contestation. You see, if you come out of the plantation, you come out of the boneyard, you are not accustomed in those circumstances to a level playing field. And what the cricket field allows is, to a large extent, a level playing field. And that when we go out on that cricket field, what we are saying to the world is that if the rules are the same, if the rules are equal, we are going to show you that we are as equal as you are. Of course, our West Indies cricket has a special place in the annals of world sport. We rule the cricket world, as David Rudder would say, ruled the cricket world for 20 years, mid-1970s to the mid-1990s. Some will date it from 1980 to 1995, when the West Indies did not lose a test series for 15 years. And it is the longest that any team has dominated a team sport in the history of humanity, recorded history of humanity. Here we are, the poorest cricketing country in the world, dominating the world for almost 2 decades. That is a feat that cannot be denied. So on this program, we are going to be celebrating cricket, and we are going to be talking about cricket as much more than a sport. Cricket as politics, cricket as sociology, cricket as art, cricket as culture, cricket as essentially a unifying Caribbean tool. Think about cricket. Cricket as Caribbean integration, cricket as political expression, cricket as anti-imperialism, cricket as anti-apartheid, cricket as anti-racism, cricket serving so many roles in our society. And so that's how we're going to be looking at the game on this program, the cricket podcast, what we call West Indies Cricket 101. What we want to do tonight is we want to go a little back in time. I had the good fortune of interviewing Conrad Hunte and Wes Hall. They were two members of the dominant team of the 1960s. You know, before we got into the world beater, as it were, between the mid 1970s to the mid 1990s, we had a powerful team in the 1970s. That team included people like Conrad Hunte, Gary Sobers, Rohan Kanai, Basil Butcher, Joe Solomon, Jackie Hendricks, the fast bowlers, Wes Hall and Charlie Griffith, Lance Gibbs, the world beater spinner from Guyana. And they were the core of that team of the 1960s. Of course, Sir Frank Worrell captained the team from 1961 to 1963, when he retired and gave way to Gary Sobers. And so I had a good fortune, I think it was sometime in the 1990s, 1999 to be exact, when I got the chance to talk to Conrad Hunte and Wes Hall. I was in Barbados to cover the West Indies versus Australia series. And I was then part of Carib Nation TV. I'm still part of Carib Nation TV. And there was the Sir Frank Worrell lecture that was given that year by Conrad Hunte, who in my book is certainly one of the two greatest opening batsmen that we have produced. I think Hunte, along with Greenwich, would be my pair of top opening batsmen. Clearly, people like Desmond Haynes and Roy Fredericks and Chris Gale and so on would be up there. But in my mind, Conrad Hunte and Gordon Greenwich would be my two best West Indies opening batsmen. And I had a chance to talk with Conrad Hunte, who gave the lecture, the Sir Frank Worrell lecture, in 1999. Shortly after that, he tragically passed away. And at the lecture was Wes Hall, who, along with Charlie Griffith, terrorized batsmen all over the world in the 1960s. Wes Hall, a legend of West Indies cricket. We have produced so many great fast bowlers, and I think people quite rightly rate Malcolm Marshall as the greatest of them all. And then you have, following quickly behind that, the Whisper in Death, Michael Holden, in my book, and Andy Roberts, certainly up there. Courtney Ambrose, certainly up there. And I would put Wes Hall, sorry. I would put Wes Hall behind, not very far behind, Malcolm Marshall, Michael Holden, Courtney Ambrose, Andy Roberts. I would say Wes Hall would be in that top five of West Indies fast bowlers. And so it was quite a pleasure for me to get to interview those two great servants of West Indies cricket. Wes Hall is still alive. He's a preacher now. He was once a politician and so forth. Quite a hell of a guy to talk to. And so I'm going to share with you tonight those conversations I had with Conrad Hunte and Wes Hall. So please share the link and let everyone know that this cricket podcast, West Indies Cricket 101, is on. It's a production of Politics 101. Please share the link and please like our YouTube page. We have a YouTube page, which is West Indies Cricket 101 with Dr. David Hinds. Please go like that page, follow that page. West Indies Cricket 101 with Dr. David Hinds. It's going to be the Facebook home of our podcast. So please share the link. Please share this link wherever you're joining us from. And in addition to that, please go to our YouTube channel, West Indies Cricket 101 with Dr. David Hinds. So we are going to share that interview with you now, that those interviews with Conrad Hunte and Wes Hall. Conrad Hunte and Wes Hall.
Welcome to Carib Nation. I'm David Hinds, coming to you once again from Barbados here at the University of the West Indies. We're going to talk cricket in this next half an hour, and we're going to talk with Sir Conrad Hunte, former opening batsman and vice captain of the West Indies cricket team. Sir Conrad Hunte, welcome to Carib Nation. You've just finished a stirring address on cricket and apartheid. Talk for a little bit about Sir Frank Worrell, the person whose tonight's lecture was dedicated to. Talk about what Sir Frank Worrell means for Caribbean cricket today, but more importantly for the Caribbean nation.
That's right. Without doubt, Sir Frank was a real visionary. He had a remarkable concept of what we as a people, not just as a cricket team, could do. His legacy now is needed more now than ever before because there's noticeable fragmentation in our island states. They're not working together as well as they should do. But I have hope, and I think Frank Worrell will be encouraged by this. A number of our leaders are now friends and visionaries like himself. And I expect that these leaders may have to give a new direction to the team. Whereas before, the West Indies cricket team was the image of what the West Indies people were like as a nation. Now, because we've gone so far down, as a people, as a team, the inspired political leaders and thinkers like Hilary Beckles and those at the university may now have to describe for us a vision of what we could be like. And out of that will come a new West Indies team again.
You're making the link between cricket and the wider society. You said in your lecture earlier that until the Caribbean can realize that unity, that regional spirit, that only then our cricket will rise again. Let's get back to Sir Frank Worrell. You were vice captain to him. Tell me about probably one or two things that you learned under Sir Frank Worrell.
Well, without doubt, the thing I learned most was his grasp of the West Indies team as a remarkable force for good. He used to say to us, gentlemen, we've come here to win the series, no doubt. But beyond that, we've come here to win the respect and the admiration of the Australian people. That was during the tour of 1961 in Australia and Tasmania. So he always saw beyond the boundary to what we as a people could be and do, always. And he used to say to us, we're not just cricketers, we're statesmen, we're ambassadors. So we must live like that, and we must perform like that, no matter where we are and how we are. And I think that was the greatest legacy he gave to me. And that's what I tried in my own life and in my own sphere to uphold ever since.
You played under Sir Frank Worrell, you played under Garfield Sobers, two of the eminent captains in our time. Talk about our present captain, Brian Lara, and talk about how he fits into that long line of distinguished leadership.
Well, one of the important challenges for any captain of West Indies is that he, in fact, occupies a position, in some sense, in quotes, greater than a prime minister or president. Only in the sense that 5 million people in the Caribbean are looking to him for some direction and some leadership. That is a terrible responsibility. Brian is what I call one of the new generation of people who've grown up since independence. They're 2 generations after post-independence, and they're 3 decades away from the thing that stirred us and make us great. Consequently, I think at the beginning, Brian did not understand this very well, and it affected him. But since the loss to South Africa, and since our victory in Sabina Park in the second test match against Australia, I have noticed a change in Brian Lara. I noticed a more humble person, a more realistic person. He's a terrific batter. I mean, without doubt, he's a genius as a batsman. And whatever happens, he needs to bat, make runs to West Indies all the time. And I'm glad to see that he's not only now making runs, but he's beginning to captain the side in the way how I would like to see him captain the side.
You spoke movingly tonight about the fact that you were born black and you were born poor, you were born disenfranchised, and you trace the path from then to now. Link all of this up for our viewers.
Yes, indeed. I've got this inner understanding of life that doesn't matter where you were born or how you were born. What matters is how you achieve, what you achieve in life, and how far you reach. So from quite early in life, at age 11, I got a vision that I was meant to be one of the outstanding people in the world. I was meant to be somebody. It so happened that I had this gift for cricket, so cricket was my vehicle for upward mobility, both socially and economically. So that is why I say I rose from poverty to plenty, from being discriminated against because I was black to being acclaimed because I was bright at cricket. And I exchanged my colonial past for an independent present. That did not give me the right just to look after myself and feel proud or puffed up. I believe my name and fame was given to me so that I might use it to help lift fallen humanity and to encourage other people also to rise from where they are, no matter how they were born or where they were born. They have within them what I call acres of diamonds. And life is about discovering what their acres of diamonds are, trying to learn how to discover them, develop them, and display them for their own benefit and for the benefit of others. And I think that's a very important lesson I can pass on to the youth.
And many people do not know that when you left the cricket field, that you went on to a bigger field, that you used the fame that you got from cricket to help humanity, especially fight against racism. Your experiences in England and later on in South Africa. Talk a little bit about your experiences in England.
That's right. In 1967, I retired from cricket earlier than I needed to at 35 years of age because I had a little bit of bad knee, but also I saw there was a growing conflict in Britain at that time. The West Indies team in 1963 were hailed as heroes. The West Indies team in 66 got poison letters in the post saying, "What are you doing here? This is not your country, go home." Because there was a fear in England that the many people coming in from the former Commonwealth into England would somehow lower the standard of life there and cause conflict. The opposite would be true, in fact, if they'd opened the doors and their hearts well. So I saw that as someone who was respected by the white and who also had a touch with the black, I had a part to play to build bridges between the two countries. So when I retired in 1967 from cricket, I then used my contacts to work up and down 33 different communities in England, trying to talk to the police, the trade union movement, the employees and things like that, as well to the immigrant. And so that we could build a multiracial society in Britain for all to share. And it is no secret that when Martin Luther King was assassinated on the 4th of April, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, there would have been racial violence in Notting Hill in England. But because of the 6 months I had to work in England, rather than being with the West Indies team in Jamaica, I was able to meet some of the top leaders in the Black Power movement and persuade them that violence was not the only way to bring justice, that we had to find, like Martin Luther King, a non-violent way to bring justice. And because I had worked with them before King was assassinated, they called the demonstration off in Notting Hill that they were planning. And that saved Britain, I think, a lot of maybe lives and hardship. And I'm very grateful for that. And from then onwards, the police asked me to train them in multicultural strategies and tactics to deal with a new situation in Britain, which was very new to the country.
And then you ventured into South Africa, at that time most notorious for its apartheid system. Tell us a little bit about your experiences in South Africa.
Well, because of my experience in England, I worked there from 67 to 80 with visits to other parts of the world. I went to Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea. But with that experience, my friends in South Africa felt that I could play a part in meeting people privately, individually, and helping to bring understanding in the white community and bring hope and healing to the black community. So I went there on 6 visits from 1976 to 1989, meeting people in all different walks of life at all different levels. And I was always able to use my own experiences, my own background, to give them hope that maybe someday, I don't know when, I don't know how, a solution can come to them. But meanwhile, they had to prepare themselves, because bitterness destroys the one who is bitter and does nothing for the justice of his cause. So I tried to get the black people to shed their bitterness, but not the justice of their cause, in order to build for the future a South Africa for all black and white that they all could be proud of. And so as a result of that, I then went back in 1991 as a cricket coach. So all that previously, my work from 76 to 89, helped me in my work from 1992 to 1999, when I came back to Barbados.
You talked about when you first went to South Africa and went to Soweto, and you look at that vast expand of land. Talk a little bit about what you felt when you looked over that township, as they call it.
Well, I arrived in Soweto just 5 months after the June 16 riots of 1976. And some of the comrades who had taken part in those riots took me on a sightseeing tour of Soweto. And they took me to a park called the Sir Ernest Oppenheimer's Tower. And from that position, I could see a panoramic view of Soweto stretching out beneath me as far as the eyes could see. At that time, conservative estimates said 3.5 million people lived there. Today is more like 5.3 million. It's the 5th largest city in the Southern Hemisphere. From that position, they showed me how that the police, with their brutal tactics, had caused them to react, and they burnt the bottle shops, the post offices, the libraries, and the schools in reaction to what the police were doing. And after only 3 days there, having seen some of that, and also experiencing that the people in Soweto didn't own their homes. They had no inside running water, no inside toilets, no tarred roads, no electricity. After 3 days there, I felt a deep trauma in my spirit. It so happened I went straight from Soweto to Stellenbosch, complete opposite. Stellenbosch was a beautiful university town with lovely buildings, lovely tree-lined avenues, lovely tar roads, everything. I love beauty as well. But I could not forget the agony of Soweto. And then on my third visit to Stellenbosch, a thought surfaced in my mind, and that helped me to resolve the conflicts I was feeling. The thought said, Soweto and Stellenbosch are two extremities of the same human reality. The white man needs the black man needs the white man. And by the most drastic change in the black man and the white man, South Africa will be a pattern of unity for the world. Now, I carried that hope of an answer with me in my 6 visits to South Africa, as I said, between 76 and 89. I didn't know how it would come, and I didn't know who would bring it. But then Nelson Mandela was released from Robben Island after 27 years. He was the hope, and he brought the answer.
Let us get back to some purely cricketing matters. You were probably the greatest opening batsman that the West Indies has produced. And obviously we have a crisis these days with our batting in general, but our opening batting in particular. Talk a little bit about what you see as some of the deficiencies of our batsmen these days.
Our present batsmen, especially openers, do not move their feet enough. When you open an innings and the ball is moving around and is new, you must be like a ballet dancer. You must be light on your feet. You must be able to move forward and backwards, sideways, and otherwise very quickly at a drop of a hat, because that ball is coming at you almost like 90 miles an hour. A number of our cricketers need to learn to skip. Like any boxer, Muhammad Ali, when they prepare for boxing, that's what they do, they skip. They must be light on their feet. Secondly, some of them show some very glaring technical errors. They play across the line rather than straight. And I think that comes out of a lack of proper coaching in the last 10, 15 years. Not so much the technical stuff, but the mental and psychological stuff. Chaps were not, I don't think, enough sharpened in their mental acumen. They were not taught how to think, how to visualize, how to set goals, and how to overcome negative influences. We're going to have to instill that now in the present team, because I think it's not too late. It is late, but not too late. We can still do that. But even beyond that, we're going to have to go back now out in our villages and our districts, where a lot of us came from as raw youngsters with raw talent. We're going to have to find the new talent, inculcate in them these qualities, bring them on, and West Indies will one day be great again.
Do you think that one-day cricket has had a negative influence on our batsmen?
I think so. I used to think that even the mature players, because they were mature and set in their technique, might not be affected. I'm beginning to change my mind. I think the one-day approach has affected our ability to concentrate over long periods for the 5-day test match series, even for the mature players, and especially for the youngsters whose technique is not being formed. I think that the one-day cricket has negatively affected their technique. And that's why you see a lot of them playing across, hitting balls through the air. I'm inspired and encouraged by my friend Evan Weeks. He said that in a whole career spanning 15 years, he only hit 1 6 in his life, and that was off no ball. His idea was, when you hit the ball in the air, you stand a chance of being out, so hit it on the ground.
You played with some of the best spinners the world has produced. Sonny Ramadhin, Alfred Valentine, Lance Gibbs. Today, spin is not something that is featuring very much in West Indies cricket. Talk about the decline of spin bowling, and talk about how we can get spin bowling to feature once again in our cricket.
Yeah, things have a way of working in cycles. And of course, I think it was Clive Lloyd who went after the 75 defeat in Australia. He saw the effectiveness of the fast bowlers. And because we had a proliferation of fast bowling, he said, well, let's use what we have. Let's have an attack, a 4-pound attack of fast bowlers. And so the spinner was not encouraged for 20 years. And of course, if the spinner is not encouraged, because he takes a long time to learn his craft and his art, they have died out. You know, they would be Q who service, but didn't have a chance, so they went by the wayside. But I noticed it's beginning to come back again. Young Nehemiah Perry bowled very well against Australia in the second test match at Savannah Park. I'm sorry that this fella, Ram Nawain, got a shoulder injury. I liked him as a left-hand leg spin googly bowler. I think we're going to have to, in our next, what Professor Lubeckel calls the next rise of West Indies cricket, we're going to have to look again out in our villages and our districts for the youngster who has a fascination with spin the ball and encourage them. Because I think the best attack is a balanced attack. You need your fast bowlers, but you also need your spinners. Because on the day in which the batsmen get on top, you're going to need somebody who's going to come in and bowl long overs, but good overs, like Shane Warne or McGill, and give you a chance of getting wickets.
So Conrad, you played some brilliant innings in your time. Probably the most memorable was your 260 in association with Sir Garfield Sobers during his record-breaking 365 in 1957 against Pakistan. Relive that innings for us.
Well, that was a remarkable time because Pakistan batted first and got only 108. And so I went up with Rohan Kanai and opened the innings. And I had a feeling something remarkable was going to happen because the very first ball from a fellow called Khan Mohammed, he seemed to be trying to bowl a bumper to me. And so I was already in position to try to hook, but the ball didn't get up. It kept straight down. But luckily I had kept my eyes on the ball. And as a result, I hit that ball off middle stump with a crossbat, which I don't encourage people to do, and went for 4 runs. And I thought my day is in. And it so happened that I got going, and Kanai and I put on 100 runs for the first wicket. And then walked Gary Sobers. And somebody had said, you know, when this young man gets 100, he's going to get 3. And sure enough, Gary and I got together for the next 2 days, and the Pakistanis could not penetrate our defense nor stop our attacking shots. And I was ahead of him by 100 runs. I was going for the partnership record, which was 451, set in 1934 by Don Bradman and Ponsford. I was aware of the record. I made a fatal flaw. I did not register that Ijaz Butt was a substitute fielder at mid-wicket. I assumed that he was like the rest, leaden-footed now after 2 days in the field. But because he was fresh, I got in line and pushed the ball to his left, certain single, because we've been running so well between the wickets. But he scooped in on the ball quicker than I anticipated. He collected the ball with one hand, direct hit on the sticks on the other end, and I was just an inch out. I was absolutely poleaxed. Not so much for the individual record, but for the world record. I felt I had let Gary down. I had made a calculated error in my judgment, and as a result, was 5 runs short of that wonderful record. But all things being well, I think the right man went on to score that record because Gary is the best ever cricketer who have ever lived.
Talk a little bit about Rohan Kanai. You're one of your partners in that innings.
Yes, indeed. Rohan, in the 1957-58 series against Pakistan, was asked to open with me. But he's not really an opening batsman. He's really number 3. But he and I put on more 100-wicket opening partnership than any other body. In my whole long career, I had some 13 or 14 extra partners. But Rohan and I played best together as openers and also at 1 and 3 because often we got a wicket, lost a wicket early. Rohan came in, he played so well the new ball. He and I were always able to redress the situation. And I admire and respect my friend Rohan Bubalai Kanhai for his remarkable gift. Also, he's another genius for cricket.
Mm-hmm. So Conrad Hunt, finally, parting words for Caribbean people as we move into the new millennium.
All my Caribbean friends out there, as we move into the new millennium, in a global village, we as a Caribbean people need to accept our calling to be one. I believe we are knitted together by a common heritage and a common history. And we must form some kind of a political union, a confederation, if you like, of West Indies states, where our unity out of diversity will be our strength and our glory. And as with the West Indies team, we grew to be the best in the world and eventually brought a new dynamic to the world of cricket. We as a West Indian people, united as one, will bring a new dynamic into the world of the economy and the politics of humanity.
Words of inspiration from Sir Conrad Hunte, former opening batsman and vice captain of the West Indies cricket team. Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Wendy Fitzwilliam, Miss Universe 1998, and I'm watching you, Carib Nation.
Reverend Wesley Hall, former West Indies fast bowler, cricket administrator, welcome to Carib Nation.
Thank you very much indeed.
Wes, first of all, let me congratulate you on your recent ordination as Minister of Religion.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's talk about cricket. You have been an administrator, manager of various West Indies cricket team over the last 10 years or so. And obviously, it is well known that it's been over the last 10 years that we've begun our, if you will, fall from grace as a leading cricketing nation. Talk a little bit to us about how that all started.
Well, I think that you have to remember that teams, you know, you will get great teams, and as soon as the very great players all retire at one time, you'll get going to a transition period. And I think that we have been very lucky from the days of Bradman through, not from the days of the Black Bradman, George Headley,
Right.
through to Sober, Warwick's, Walcott, Sobers, Hunt, Richards, Greenwich, the Hinds, all the great players, Clive Lloyd. We have been able to produce them in successive years. But and down to Lara and Hooper, these guys. But what happens when you get a situation like in 1995, when so many of them left the scene at the same time, and you go into this transition period, it is rather difficult to sort of get the team to click. And after we lost, there was so much postulation in the press about us having fallen from grace and things like that in 1995-96 against England. But I would say that we are on the way back, and it has happened even to the great Australian sides. You remember that invincible Warwick Armstrong side. You also remember the Don Bradman 1948 side, and this has happened to the great English sides. Now, the English sides of 1960s were a very good size, and I think that you just go in cycles.
One observation made about the West Indies team is the lack of that mental toughness that was reminiscent of former teams. Do you agree with that?
Well, in a way, yes. And how do you get mental toughness? In playing cricket, you get physical fitness and mental fitness. Now, physical fitness is rather easy to get. Anybody can run, you could start walking for 40 minutes a day, increase it to an hour, and then you can start trotting, you can start doing sprinting bursts, and your body responds marvelously to that type of rigorous, in the end, preparation. So you become very fit. But how do you prepare your mind? It's a harder thing. It is not really only you alone. When you talk about mental fitness, that is a team approach. The team, I must be your keeper, and you must be mine. In other words, let me explain it to you. The opening batsmen must do their job. They are there to open and give us a good start. The number 3 batsman must never be an opening batsman. He must come in. He's obviously your best player. He must come in when the ball has had at least 20 overs, where the wicket no longer has that height that the bowlers are getting out of it and bounce. The wicket is now innocuous 2 hours after it has started. And the 4, 5, and 6 are getting better and better. But if the number 3 man leaves it for the number 5, he obviously is going to leave it to the number 7. It's a domino effect. So
You served several stints as a selector, as chairman of the selectors, and obviously this whole issue of insularity has crept into our cricket time and time again. Talk a little bit about your experience as a selector trying to pick a cricket team, a West Indian cricket team, and coming up against criticisms from the various territories.
But yeah, well, I've had a lot of experience managing the side when it was a world rating side. And one thing I'd say to you is that we played once in Australia with a triangular tour, Australia, Sri Lanka, and West Indies. Now, Australia got a man called Merriman, who was an ombudsman, and he became their manager. They wanted to do things. He did a lot of things. He taught the players that they should judge themselves. That, you know, if somebody had done something wrong, it would be a players' court, and they would find players, and they did that for Australia. The Sri Lankans had got one of these people from the hierarchy in a conglomerate, a tea conglomerate, and they did it. I was the manager of the greatest team on earth. And when I came back to Barbados, I had no job just because I managed the best team in the world. That is something that you have to worry about, and players see that, and that happens. Now, as a selector, we try to play the team that is the best team for the match and for the series. Taking into account, it is a matter of meritocracy. It is not only that you have made 30 and I have made 28, so therefore you should play, but it has to do with, you know, what sort of demeanor has this man? You know, how is he as a team man? Would he be the type of person that we could invest in him and he becomes a team player? And, you know, and still continue to produce regularly for the West Indies? Those are the sort of things that happen. Now, sometimes when you do that, insularity creeps in. And if he's a Guyanese, well, don't go to Georgetown. He's a Bajan, don't come to Bridgetown. And if he's a Jamaican, don't go to Kingston. I mean, not that you're going to be harmed, but sometimes there's a thing called psychological abuse. It is just like a man telling the woman that he marries that when I knew you, you were nobody, or you didn't come from anywhere. That is psychological abuse. It is just as bad to her mind and her psyche as if you had given her a slap. You know what I mean? And when you have insularity among West Indian cricketers, and you find that it is affecting the selectors because of the psychological abuse, I think that's a bad thing. In the end, I think the selectors have won out. They have picked the people who they thought, you know, should play, and it's all right. But you have to remember one thing. For 18 years, the West Indies team played 29 series without losing. And you never heard anybody give any praise to a selector. So, you know, it means that if you do, you're damned, and if you don't, you're not. So it's a hard job. I enjoyed it. I tried to make sure that whenever I picked a team, it meant that we had sat down conscientiously. We had looked about what was best for West Indies cricket and not for a particular island.
Wesley Hall, the Reverend Wesley Hall, thank you very much for speaking to us here in Caribbean Nation, and good luck on your new career in the ministry.
Oh yes, oh yes. I consider myself a lucky guy. I had the pleasure there of speaking to two great men, two great Caribbean men, Sir Conrad Hunte and Wesley Hall, two of our great cricketers. And oh boy, you know, what a privilege it has been. And that interview was done in 1999. So what, 25 years ago. In case you're just joining us, this is This is West Indies Cricket 101 Cricket Podcast. It's our new program, and we are going to be airing it for now on Saturday and Sunday evenings. Tomorrow evening, we are going to be discussing the recently announced West Indies team for the World Cup, the T20 World Cup, which is going to be in the Caribbean and the United States of America tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Guyana time, New York time, East Coast time, as they say. We are going to be airing the program. We will do 7 o'clock on Saturday nights and 6 o'clock on Sunday evening. So please make sure that you tune in tomorrow night. My guest is going to be Dr. Vincent Adams, who was an opening batsman for Guyana. Opening batsman for Guyana. He opened with Roy Fredericks in the late 60s. I think he made his debut in 1969. And he got injured and so therefore cut short his cricket career. He was a very, very good opening batsman. And he's going to join me tomorrow night to discuss the cricket team that was picked by Cricket West Indies, the squad, the 15-man squad. Lots of expectations there. There were lots of discussions. Some people felt that Etmaya should not be in the team. There was a lot of discussion about whether Joseph would have gotten into the team and so forth. In the end, the selectors, I think, did a fairly good job. I'll talk more about that tomorrow night. Selecting a team is never easy, especially if you're selecting a team for the Caribbean, because, of course, we have so many islands, and each island expected their players to get into the team. By the way, there are 5 members of the Guyana, 5 cricketers from Guyana in the team: Hetmaya, Shofin Rutherford, Gudakesh Moti, Shamar Joseph, of course, has made it into the team, and Romario Shepherd. So it's Shepherd, it's Moti, Etmaya, Rutherford, and Shamar Joseph. And if you look, you will notice that 4 of them are from Bobby's: Joseph, Shepherd, Hetmaya, Moti, and Shofin Rutherford is from Demerara. I think he's from the Enmore, Haslington area. So 5 Guyanese. So the Guyanese really would be delighted, and quite justifiably so, because Guyana's been really playing good cricket over the last decade or so. We'll be talking more about that team tomorrow night. So please tune in tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, when we will do our next edition of our cricket podcast, West Indies Cricket 101. It was such a delight to listen to Conrad Hunte, and cricketer turned peace activist, and his eloquence about the role of cricket and its stress on regional integration. It's still a dream. It's still a dream. Remember, we did the Federation 1958 to 1962. Jamaica held a referendum and so split it apart. Guyana, of course, wasn't taken into the Federation for political reasons, but it was a good shot. And we after the breakup in 1962, we still survived in 1973. CARICOM, the Treaty of Chaguaramas, when the Big Four, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and Guyana, inaugurated CARICOM, and CARICOM is still around. It's still around 51 years later. 51 years later, many people feel that we could be closer as a region, But you know, the further we get from independence and the more we've developed into these nation states, it becomes very difficult for political integration. But certainly there's functional integration, economic integration. We still are searching for that single economy. I think we have moved close to a single market. Hopefully we can get to a single economy. We have a court, we have a CCJ. Not all the countries have signed on to the CCJ, but it's there, and they're subject to the rulings of the CCJ, even if they are not part of the CCJ. But it was so heartening to hear Conrad Hunte really talking about Caribbean integration as the way forward. I tell the story all the time of CLR James slipping that note in the pocket of Frankie Worrell as he was leaving at the helm of the West Indies team to go to Australia in 1960-61. And the note said something to the effect that, you know, if you were able to give a good account of yourself in Australia, it will prove to the world that the West Indies is ready to govern itself. CLR James had campaigned tirelessly for a black man to be named the full-time captain of the West Indies. So Frank Worrell became that person, the first black man full-time. I say full-time because George Headley had captained the team once before. I think it was against England. I think. And he had captained one test match, because the regular captain had gotten injured, and so he was a stand-in captain. And once the regular captain came back, Headley no longer captain. By then, Headley was in the twilight of his career, and so therefore, so Frank Worrell was the first full-time captain of the West Indies, and I think he captained for 15 test matches, 1960-61 in Australia, 1962 against India. I think we demolished India 5-0. Of course, in 1960-61, we lost to Australia 1-2, but it was such an exciting series. It was the series of the tight test match that the Australians really gave a standing ovation, a farewell, motorcade, really, for the West Indies. And I think that series really, in a sense, reinvented cricket and put the West Indies brand of cricket on the map. Like I said, in 1962, Frankie Worrell led the team to 5-0 against India. 1963, we won against England 3-1. I think 3-1. And then Worrell retired. He had captained 3 series, 15 test matches, and handed it over to Gary Sobers, who was and still is the greatest cricketer that ever lived. Sobers was 5 cricketers, could make the team. He could make the team purely as a batsman. I would say, along with George Headley, Vivian Richards, so Everton Weeks, Rohan Kanai. I put Rohan Kanai there. A lot of people don't put him there, but for me, Everton Weeks, George Headley, Gary Sobers, Rohan Kanai, and Viv Richards are the 5 greatest West Indian batsmen. With all due respect to, and there's some other greats. I mean, Lara is really up there, but I don't put Lara in the first 5. I mean, and it's barely. Some people argue the runs he made and so on, but it's hard for me to see Lara. I have never seen George Headley. I may have seen. I've never seen. I'm wondering whether I saw tape of Headley, but everybody can be wrong. And certainly he's the greatest, the Black Bradman, as they called him. But I've seen Richards. I've seen Sobers, both live and video. I saw Everton Weeks video, and Rohan Kanai. I just think Kanai was an exceptional batsman, not given his true accolades. But those are my 5 greatest West Indian batsmen. And you're talking about Lara not being in that 5. You're talking about Gordon Greenwich not being there. Frank Worrell himself, Clyde Walcott, Clive Lloyd, Seymour Norse. You're talking about them not be Conrad Hunte not being in that top 5, you know. But certainly Gary Sobers. Gary Sobers, one of the great batsmen. He could make the team as a fast bowler. He could make the team as an orthodox left-arm spinner. He could make the team as a Chinaman, unorthodox left-arm spinner. And I think he could on fielding alone force his way into the team. A magnificent catcher close to the wicket, especially at short leg, backward short leg, and tremendous player. I don't think anybody could match him. I remember when I was a boy, they talked about Bernard Julian really stepping into that mantle. Julian was a good batsman, He didn't play as much for the West Indies. He's a good batsman, good left-arm fast bowler. He could come back and bowl left-arm orthodox. But he never developed his potential. And so, therefore, didn't come close to Sobers. The old-timers talk about Sobers' friend who died in that tragic car accident, Smith, Jamaica, O.G. Smith, O'Neill Smith, who died tragically. Sobers was driving, they were going home one night, and he died. And they said he would have come close to matching Sobers, Collie Smith from Jamaica. But so we have had good all-rounders in the West Indies and around the world, but none could come close to the great Garfield St. Albans Sobers out of Barbados, West Indies. Sobers, of course, captained the team from 65 to 73. The team had begun to decline under Sobers. Begun to decline, and by 1973, they had given the captaincy to Rohan Kanai. Kanai was in the twilight of his career. He captained, I think, for about 10 test matches or thereabout. I know he captained against Australia in 1973, against England in 1974, in the West Indies, and in England in 1973, a 3-match series. So he would have captained 13 test matches. 1973 against Australia, 1973 in England, 1974 when England came to the West Indies, and then it was turned over to the greatest of them all, Clive Lloyd, who captained for 74 test matches. And so we have a lot to celebrate in our cricket, and we are looking forward to see what can come of this 2020. I am not a big 2020 fan, but I have no choice. It's where the action is, you know. I think 2020 has really helped to not destroy West Indies cricket, but certainly the decline in our cricket partly has to do with the T20 game. I think other countries have been able to work around the T20, and they still have been able to maintain that balance between the 2020 game and the longer versions. And you notice in 1999, Conrad Hunte is saying, and he wasn't talking about T20 because in 1999 T20 wasn't there. He was talking about one-day cricket, 50 overs and They used to play some 40 overs and 60 overs back then. By 1999, it was mostly 50 overs. And he was talking about how that messed with the technique of our players. You know, when you look at a person like Hetmyer, who I think has tremendous talent. He for me, is the best batsman in the West Indies. I hear people talk about Puran and so on. And so Hetmyer, temperamentally and technically, is the best West Indian batsman. And I think whether it's T20, one-dayers, or test, and he ought to be playing test matches. He ought to be playing test matches, right? I think he's the best batsman, but clearly he has not been able to mentally deal with what is required of the modern day cricketer in traversing the three forms of the game. And he has not been able to mentally deal with it. So I think Hetmyer's problem is a mental problem, right? And he ought to be playing test cricket. He ought to be playing test cricket. But the selectors have pigeonholed him into a one-day cricketer, a T20 finisher, and you know, they pick specialists. My thing is you pick your best team. Your best team. I think Hetmyer and Puran should be playing test cricket. Should be playing test cricket. And the West Indies should put them on the park. You see? But clearly you take Hetmyer, he gets out, caught at deep mid-wicket most of the time. Because it's a T20 game and he's not playing enough 4-day and 5-day cricket, where he gets a chance to acclimatize himself. And I think the Cricket West Indies has to stop this nonsense of pigeonholing. You take Obed McCoy. He's not in the 2020 team. But Obed McCoy was sitting at home while the 4-day game is playing, the recently concluded West Indies series. And he's not turning out. He's not turning out for the Windward Islands. And he's a good enough bowler, should not just be playing 2020. But he doesn't play one-day cricket. He doesn't play 4-day cricket. He's sitting at home. And he could have been playing some 4-day cricket, sharpening himself to be more in contention for the 2020 game. Same thing with Fabian Allen, sitting there in Jamaica. Well, Jamaica is doing miserably. But because we say Fabian Allen is a 2020 specialist, he's sitting there and not playing. You know? Our boy, who is in Nepal there with the team, he was injured during the 4-day series, and so he didn't get to play. But I think all these players should be playing all versions of the game. All versions of the game. I'm talking about Kemo Paul. He was injured, so he wasn't able to play in the 4-day cricket. And so here we are. You take Joseph. You can't begrudge the man. Shamar, he goes there. He's in India. They play him one match. He's going to get a big box. But Shamar would have been better off representing Guyana in the 4-day competition. Would have done so much for him. Rutherford, the same thing. They're there, but they're not playing. They're earning money. This is the thing. But in earning money, they don't get to sharpen their game because they're missing all these competitions. I don't know. But here's hoping that we are going to be able to do much better than we're doing. So please make sure you share the link. And I see some of you have been doing so. Share the link and please go like our YouTube channel, West Indies Cricket 101 with Dr. David Hinds. Please go and like that channel so we can grow that channel. And tomorrow night, we are going to be giving our analysis of the team, the squad. The team is the 11, no? The squad that was selected, the 15-man squad that was selected for the World Cup. I think a disservice, and I'm going to end with this, was done to young Kevin Sinclair. Kevin Sinclair first played for the West Indies 3 or 4 years ago as a one-day player. Then he played as a T20 player. Then he played in the one-day team. Now they're not even considering him for one-day and T20. Kevin Sinclair should be in this squad that they've picked there. He is one of those cricketers that I think can play all forms of the game. And he doesn't have to switch gear. He's striking in 4-day cricket. He's striking at 70-something, 80-something, I think, in 4-day cricket. You know, I think sometimes the selectors really don't get it right. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow night. So I want to thank you all so much for tuning in to this inaugural edition of West Indies Cricket 101, the Politics 101 cricket podcast. And I'm going to see you all tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. We say for emphasis, tomorrow night at 6 p.m. 6 o'clock tomorrow night or tomorrow evening, take your pick, and we are going to be on. See you all.
Rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here comes the West Indies. And when you're facing the generals, nearly every ball is a funeral. And when we batting, brother, go and put your men on the boundary line. And if you give we a lick up, that is merely a hiccup. Look, you win the little battle, you lose the war. It's the same result every time. Everybody sing. Here comes the West Indies. Here comes the West Indies. Them rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here comes the West Indies. I tell you now, here comes the West Indies. Here comes the West Indies. Them bad boys gonna bring you to your knees. Here comes the West Indies. Special request to the Trini posse.